The world of Game of Thrones might seem like a fantastical place with its dragons, zombies, and evil ice kings, but many of the stories, places, events, and characters are based on real history. The most unexpected and possibly the most upsetting scene in Game of Thrones so far was the assassination of Robb Stark and his family at the infamous Red Wedding. The real inspiration for this bloody event comes from Scotland in the year 1692.
So, with the Glencoe Massacre, basically what happened was in Scotland in 1692, the new king, William of Orange, required that the clans in Scotland swear fealty to him. But some of the clans were slow to do it because they already had sworn fealty to James VII and he hadn't released them. And one of those clans that was slow to swear fealty was the MacDonald clan. Not only were they kind of slow to swear fealty, they were also kind of the riff-raff of the neighborhood. William of Orange became concerned and he asked the Campbells to take them out. The instruction was to cut them out root and branch. So what they did, the Campbells, in the middle of a winter storm, they sought shelter in the MacDonald clan's household. And in those days, the laws of hospitality applied. After 12 days of eating their food and living together happily, one night the Campbell clan got out of their bed and murdered the MacDonalds while they were sleeping. When this came out, the nation of Scotland was scandalized. It even went into Parliament where it was declared a murder. This actually had a negative reflection on the crown, kind of like the Red Wedding did with the Lannisters.
We've only seen Valyria once in the show, but it has a backstory that was certainly drawn from real life. The city of Valyria was built on top of 14 active volcanoes called the 14 Flames. Tyrion recites a poem about the destruction of Valyria, saying,
"They held each other close, then turned their backs upon the end. The hills that split asunder, and the black that ate the skies."
History buffs might remember another infamous volcanic eruption that destroyed a prosperous city.
The Doom of Valyria was based on real-world events, in particular the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii in 79 AD or CE. Pompeii was a coastal resort-type town. There were a lot of nobles who took their vacations in this very quaint, I think, rustic place. When Vesuvius erupted, it basically killed everyone that was standing there. Plumes of hot ash went up into the sky. Archaeologists say that the victims of Vesuvius, in some cases, were done in either by the heat or the ash, and they died where they lay, and you can still see that to this day. And Pompeii is no longer a town, it's basically a living grave.
One of the main aspects of Westeros that differs from the real world is the long and unpredictable seasons. But it could still be that Martin was drawing from real historical climate changes that occurred shortly after the medieval period.
The Little Ice Age was a period in Europe from about 1300 to 1850 in which the entire world underwent a cooling period. Basically, it meant colder winters, cool, wet summers, shorter growing seasons, which meant less food for everyone. When the climate turns cold, everything becomes more intense, more extreme. The Little Ice Age begins in 1300, then there's the Great Famine in 1315, and then in 1348 there's the Black Death. Meanwhile, during that entire period, both France and England are caught up in all of this scheming about the throne. I think there's kind of a message there that relates to the dominant theme of the series, and that's instead of High Lords playing and kings playing at these power games, what they're really supposed to be doing is looking after their people.
The giant wall of ice that stands in the north of Westeros and constitutes the last defense against the Night King and his army of wights is a truly fantastical part of Game of Thrones. But even this highly implausible construction is based somewhat in reality.
Hadrian was a Roman emperor who commanded that the Roman legionaries build a wall in England around 122 AD or CE.
Not only is the presence of a wall an obvious parallel, some historians also think that Hadrian's creation was a way for the Romans to defend their border against the Celtic tribes to the north. tribes which bear a close resemblance to the wildlings in Game of Thrones.
No one really knows why Hadrian built the wall. But the thing that people do know from the various writings from ancient Rome is that Romans saw the quote-unquote barbarians to be savages. You know, a major function of the wall came to be, you know, watching out for those barbarians and keeping them out.
One of the newest religions appearing in the Seven Kingdoms is actually based on one of the oldest religions in the world.
Zoroastrianism is a very ancient religion. It originated in Persia about 2,500 years ago. Zoroastrians believe in a continual struggle, kind of dualism, a struggle between light and dark, good and evil. Their god is engaged in a continuous battle against this evil other god.
Both religions are also centered pretty closely around fire. Zoroastrian fire temples are a place of worship, and fire, along with clean water, is seen to be a symbol of purity.
One of the interesting things about the Zoroastrians is not just that they revere fire and they have fire temples. In ancient times, they had different classes of priests, and one class of priest was kind of a magi, and that particular priest had not only the ability to see the future in the flames, kind of like Melisandre, but also the ability to create kind of purification rituals. One of the most complex ones actually began with a bath in their fire temples, which it kind of reminds me a little bit of Melisandre in that bath scene. I mean, maybe that's kind of a stretch, but you know, there's kind of a similarity there.
With so many references like these scattered throughout his books, it's no surprise that George R.R. Martin is a big fan of medieval history. That being said, we're glad he added dragons and White Walkers because it makes everything a little more exciting.